Welcome back to Real Clear Radio Hour, brought to you by the Competitive Enterprise Institute. I'm your host, Bill Frezza. For the second half of our show, we're going to take a field trip up to Stow, Massachusetts, to attend the Battle for the Airfield World War II reenactment. It's a crisp fall day with clear skies as hundreds of spectators and reenactors assemble to participate in this bit of living history. We're here on the 100-acre site of the Collings Foundation, which today not only houses the facility that stores and displays a massive collection of vintage vehicles and aircraft, but is surrounded by the tented encampments of World War II reenactors dressed in uniforms of American, British, Russian, and German troops. Director of Marketing Hunter Chaney explains.
So the Collings Foundation is an educational nonprofit foundation. Our goal is to organize and support living history events and the preservation and exhibition of very rare historical artifacts as a means to engage people in history.
Different than a book in a classroom.
Different than a book in a classroom. So, unlike a static museum, what we want to do is create an environment, create an interaction with history.
The sounds, the smells, the sights, the touch.
Absolutely. So, here today is our 8th year doing the Battle for the Airfield reenactment. Today we'll have about 350 reenactors.
All in uniform. I mean, you got two armies here, right?
And that's the beauty of it. This is the golden environment here where all the encampments are set up original to late 1944. When you come through the encampments, people walk around. What they're seeing is straight out of 1944. You might walk up to a German artillery tent, and you'll say, well, what's this? And the reenactor will get up and say, oh, well, this is a sighting device, or this is what we use to calibrate the altitude of our, of the oncoming.
So they're here to educate, not just to reenact.
Exactly. So what we aim to do is the finest form of edutainment. You're entertained, you're engaged, and you're learning something at the same time. Between our reenactments, here people have the chance to explore, learn the life of a soldier. And then at that point, we have 2 reenactments per day, one at 11.
Right on this battlefield.
Right. So what you're seeing out here, for those listening here, we have this beautiful grass strip. This is a 2,200-foot airstrip. This is where we take our planes off.
And you got about 4 of them out there right now.
Yeah, beautiful World War II aircraft, some very rare. Like, for instance, the Fiesler Storch. This is a German reconnaissance aircraft. Same type of aircraft that temporarily rescued Mussolini. You might remember that history.
Yeah, I know that story.
So the Germans have captured the airfield.
That's the scenario.
That's the scenario. And it's up to the Allied forces to overtake the Axis position and further their advancement through Europe.
Okay.
So this dynamically choreographed reenactment ensues. And by that, what I mean is,
people know their places. They're not making it up as they go along.
Right.
Here.
Well,
a little bit.
You're dealing with 350 reenactors all running around. Of course, the Germans, they're all about pageantry, formality. So they start coming out. We have this parade car, and the German high rank comes out for a field inspection.
That's the opening.
That's the opening. And then at that point, they get word. Here come the Allies. So they start to get everything ready. They send up the reconnaissance aircraft.
And we get to watch that go up?
Oh, yeah. Which is an unusual aircraft because this is a plane that has a cruise speed of about 25 miles an hour.
Oh, really? Before it stalls? No kidding.
So the Allies start their advancement. The Germans know that they're coming. So at this point, they send up the reconnaissance aircraft. And you can see it hovering. Uncanny how it has this ability to hover over the field. They point out, here come the Allies. So they land real quick. This is an airplane that can land in under 100 feet.
No kidding.
They scramble out, and then it starts. The Germans start pulling out their heavy equipment. We're talking about an OT-810.
These field artillery pieces.
Field artillery, the dreaded German 88 flat cannon.
Those are the 88s?
Yeah. The very, very effective weapon that the Germans had. And so this back and forth of battle happens. And we're not quite sure if the Allies are going to have enough resources to actually take over the field today. But we'll have to find out.
That was Hunter Chaney, Director of Marketing at the Collings Foundation. Walk with me past the shadow of the Radio Shack and off toward the encampment so we can talk to some of the reenactors before the Living History program begins.
And now for the news. Reporting from BBC London.
So, Dave, you're here representing the British forces. What's your role in today's event?
Today we're going to be here representing the British Airborne with the 6th Airborne Air Landing. Some of us are here with the South Staff Division and Battalion, trying to give a little bit more of a living history to the public, give it more of an education on a different side other than just the GIs and the Germans.
And what's your spot in the battle that's coming?
We're going to be taking our way forward, making our way from...
What kind of plane was that just took off?
Looked like a Mustang over there.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to be here with like I said, with the British Airborne, the Parachute Regiment, the Glider Regiment. So the scenario supposedly with the battle here is the Allies are going to be making a push from one end of the field all the way up. There's going to be some German artillery that's going to be coming up after they do a reconnaissance on our
the 88s?
end. Yep, correct. So we're going to make an attempt to take out that 88 after the reconnaissance is done and try to do more of a surprise attack. Once we move forward up, we're going to have some of our British mortars that we got. We're going to try to make a push and forward up even further in.
So I suspect it's going to get a little loud this afternoon.
It'll be a little loud. We'll have some explosives and some charges to give the experience of a more realistic battle for the public so they can get a more hands-on visual than just what you would read in the books.
Many of the reenactors are veterans themselves, some from the Vietnam era, some more recent. Their reasons for participating vary. I met school teachers, mechanics, history buffs, weapons experts. Let's make our way into the American encampment. So, Jerry, you're a Vietnam combat vet. What brought you here today?
It's not about me. It's what I can give to the people to educate them as far as their knowledge and what we used, what we served with, and how we used it.
And you were a Marine?
I am a United States Marine, yes.
Late 60s served in Nam?
I was in Vietnam in 66 and 67.
So when was Tet? That was
in January of 68.
Okay.
But the first actual Tet was 66 because we took 11 rounds of incoming mortar December 20th. And I lost 3 friends.
Did you?
Yeah.
You think of them often?
I do.
After all these years?
Yeah. It still affects me. I'm in group therapy. I've been to a psychiatrist 3 times. I've had flashbacks.
Well, you're looking fit, at least. I mean, it's we're getting older now, aren't we?
We're getting older, but I still haven't forgot.
I guess the whole purpose of today is to never forget.
In a sense, yes. I enjoy doing it. I'm fortunate. I made it home.
There seems to be a lot of camaraderie amongst the reenactors.
Yes, there is. Even with the Germans as well.
Yeah. I'm going to go over there later and talk to some of them.
Yes.
Jerry, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you also. Appreciate it.
Not far from the American encampment, I ran into a group of Russian soldiers, or at least men in Russian uniforms. Our allies during the Second World War, and then our enemies while I was growing up through the Cold War. It was perhaps fitting that the Russian reenactors were camped out around a burned-out Russian T-34 tank. So, Brian, you're representing the Russians today.
Yes, sir. We're the 3rd Rifle Division based out of Pittsfield, Mass. We have members in Mass, New York State, Vermont, pretty much up and down the East Coast. Mm-hmm. We do events mainly in the East Coast. Today we're here at Collings Foundation with our camp set up. We're portraying a rear position, so we're not really a fighting position. We're kind of a support group.
We have got all the Russian equipment and uniforms, and so that's typically your role in these reenactments?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we have the rifles, we have a mortar, a radio, we have field radios, Victrola for entertainment.
Now, did any of the men have Russian roots, or is it just...
Actually, my family's from Belarus. I'm maybe one of the only ones, I think, in the group.
That goes back.
There's some Germans in our group, and Polish, and
Okay.
But I believe I may be the only Russian at the moment.
Did you have family that fought in the war?
Yes, but more like the white Russian.
Sure.
Yeah. In fact, the story I heard was my great-grandfather shot himself in the thumb to get out of the war.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Be safe today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
До свидания.
До свидания. Let's head back through the American lines on our way over to the German encampment. There's an amazing collection of vehicles and equipment here, a wonderland for gearheads, almost all of it in working order. I've been to vintage car shows before, but I've never seen anything like this. Let's go over and chat with one of the men caring for this equipment. So, Tom, what brings you up here for this reenactment?
My son and I are from New Jersey. He got us involved in World War II reenacting about 3 years ago. He's 17 now. He and I both share a love of history. I had uncles who were veterans of World War II, who as a young man myself, I remember hearing a little bit about what their experience was. So in his case, he loves both the history and he loves armor. He loves armored vehicles.
There's a lot of equipment here.
There are an incredible number of armored vehicles, and so it's a lot of fun for somebody who's an enthusiast for that. In fact, he was so keen on it that we ended up buying an armored car a couple months ago of our own. Yes, we have a 1944 armored car.
What do your neighbors think of that?
They think it's fantastic. You get nothing but thumbs up when you drive around.
Do you drive in the local Memorial Day parade with it?
It goes into parades. It's also used at reenactments. We just were at an event in the Gettysburg area, and it was a huge hit.
It looks like everybody's out here both to learn and also to teach.
Absolutely. I mean, this is an opportunity to meet the public and give them a little bit of a taste of what life was like for GIs during the 40s.
Tom, thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Now comes the hard part. Born only 9 years after the Second World War ended, with my dad and every one of my adult male relatives a GI, I can't look at a German uniform without having a strong visceral reaction. There's something a little weird about a whole encampment full of people dressed like both regular Wehrmacht soldiers and the notorious Waffen-SS troops. Let's stop first and talk to the German pilot of the Fiesler Storch as we pass by the airstrip. So, Rob, you're playing the role today of a German observation pilot. Tell us about your plane and its capabilities.
Well, it's a Fiesler Storch. As you said, it's a German observation airplane. It was designed probably in the late 30s, and it's just a really impressive plane for the time period. It can pretty much beat most modern short takeoff and landing airplanes, taking off in about 200 feet and landing in about, twice its length.
I was amazed at how slow it went.
Yeah, it can get pretty slow.
It looked like it was standing still.
With a little bit of wind, you can stand still and even go backwards if you want to.
It seemed to be able to maneuver very well, too.
Just because you're going so slow, you can maneuver pretty well.
So, how many flights did you make today?
I think I gave 3 rides and flew the reenactment flight, and there's one more reenactment flight and maybe a couple more rides.
It was a nice show. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Another 100 yards brings us to a pair of objects I've never seen in person before, but have certainly read a lot about. The dreaded German 88s, anti-aircraft weapons turned into deadly precise field artillery, responsible for the deaths of thousands of Allied soldiers. It may be hard for younger Americans to appreciate, but at the outset of the Second World War, and until the Americans developed the atom bomb, German military technology was years ahead of the Allies. It was American manufacturing capacity, not the quality of its arms, that brought the Nazis down. Let's chat with the 88 crew chief as the battle for the airfield continues behind us. So, Ron, you're here representing the German artillery as the chief of the 88 gun crew. Tell us a little bit about the history and the power of the 88.
It was a very powerful gun. It was the most accurate gun of World War II. It could fire 2 miles flat out in a horizontal position. You could bore sight the gun and do a first-round hit at 2 miles.
And it was used both for anti-aircraft and on ground?
Yes. Originally it was used as an anti-aircraft gun. The ceiling range, maximum range, was 49,000 feet.
Wow.
Which was higher than any of our bombers could fly at that time, yes. And there were various rounds that they could send up to decimate the aircraft. Rommel decided that since aircraft were few and far between during his part of the war, why don't they use them against armored targets and infantry?
That was his innovation.
Right, so he would drop the barrels down and they would decimate anything that the guns could come up against.
Pretty fearsome.
Yeah. So it was a very, very deadly, very, very accurate gun.
Ron, thanks for the history lesson.
No problem. Thank you very much.
We leave the field now and head into the hangar to assemble for a special event. Not many veterans of the Second World War are still with us to tell their stories, and so it makes it all the more precious to hear for ourselves what they experienced. The youngest GIs would now be in their 90s, many of them physically unable to attend events like this. But we're fortunate to have with us today Harry Kramer, a B-25 pilot with the 13th Air Force who flew 31 missions, and Fred McKenna, who served on the destroyer USS Quick, seeing action in Casablanca, Sicily, and the Pacific Theater. Let's wrap up our program listening to what they have to share in their own words.
Big round of applause for Mr. Kramer.
Thank you, Hunter. I'm Harry Kramer. I'm 92 years old. I want to tell you about how I got started flying. When I was 5 years old, they took a picture of me, and I had a model airplane. I loved airplanes. It was the end of the World War I, and a lot of flyers were flying around. I obtained a pilot's license at 16. I explored the possibility of being an aviation cadet. And the requirement was you had to have 2 years of college before you get in. And, of course, the war came along. I graduated from high school, went to college for about 3/4 of a year, and then the Army dropped the 2-year requirement, so I enlisted at 18. Then I started my training. It took us about 18 months to get to be a pilot. I wanted to fly P-51s, but they put me on B-25s, and I wasn't too excited about that ship at first, but boy, it was one of the best ships I ever had. The B-25 was originally a medium bomber, about 15,000 feet to drop bombs. Eventually, it would take additional functions, such as a Jimmy Doolittle raid. Then from there, we did a lot of strafing, so we had to have increased forward firing power. And what they did is they took the nose, which is normally a bombardier nose, and they converted it to an 850 caliber machine gun nose. I got to the Pacific just about the time they were converting these from standard bombers to what they called the gunship. Then in addition to the guns, we had 4 or 5 rockets on each side under the wings. So it had a lot of firepower. Our mission was to keep the Japanese from getting raw materials from Borneo and places like that and shipping off by ship to Tokyo. I flew 31 combat missions. Luckily, I never had any problem except one time when the Japs shot out my hydraulic system. I had to force land. When the war was over, it ended in August of 45. I was kept over there for a while to station troops from the various islands to Manila so they could get home. And then I got home for Christmas. Flew in the reserves for about 4 or 5 years at least, and ended up being discharged.
Thank you, sir.
Let's hear what Navy veteran Fred McKenna from the destroyer USS Quick has to add.
Well, when people ask me, when was you in World War II, I like to tell them from the beginning till the end, because the Japanese bombed in December 7th, so I tried to join up, and they told me to go home until I was 17, but that only took 3 months. So in March of 42, I joined the Navy and was in there, till about 7 or 8 months after the war ended. Probably the most important thing we were involved in was in the invasion of Sicily. Now, the invasion of Sicily, we don't hear much about it anymore. Of course, D-Day was such a big thing, but you want to remember that up until that time, the armada that was assembled for the invasion of Sicily was the biggest armada that had ever been assembled up until that time. Now, the USS Quick was assigned to, the battle plan was on the invasion, the destroyers would go in closer to the land because they could go in shallower and take out the stations that were along the coast, defensive stations. Then the next line was the cruisers, which would fire in a little bit further inland, and then the battleships which were firing way inland to try to take out airfields and staging areas. So USS Quick was supposed to be in that line, that first line that went in against the German enforcements. But the interesting thing for us that happened is the final day before the invasion, we did a final check of all our abilities, and our gun control system went out. So we were assigned back to picket duty, and the good old sister ship of ours, the USS Maddox, took our place in that first line. When the invasion started, on the first day, morning of the invasion, the Maddox, which was in the place where we were supposed to be, took a hit in the forward magazine and sank in minutes, with the majority of their people lost.
And this is why Fred McKenna is still with us. War is a terrible thing and certainly nothing to glamorize. But there are times when the civilized world needs warriors, because without them, we're left at the mercy of warriors from the uncivilized world. This Veterans Day weekend, please give thanks to those who served to defend our freedom and remember the many who never made it home. Reporting in from the Battle for the Airfield reenactment in Stow, Massachusetts, this is Bill Frezza, host of Real Clear Radio Hour, brought to you by the Competitive Enterprise Institute. You can check out Real Clear Radio Hour on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at Real Clear Frezza. And while you're at it, take a look at realclearfuture.com for daily updates on the next big wave of technologies. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Old Boston Restorations, for their support. Old Boston is a boutique property management company in Boston South End. Visit them online at oldbostonrestorations.com. That wraps up our show for this week. Please join us next week, same time, same station. See you then.